Polly, pretty Polly, could you take me unkind? Polly, pretty Polly, could you take me unkind? All right, welcome to the new ear laboratory series for Breakthrough Banjo members. So, as you probably know, inside the course there are 4 modules that are dedicated to equipping you with the skills needed to play by ear and to break down and show you the process of how to create songs on the banjo from scratch using your ear. So as an extension of that resource, I'm building the ear laboratory to kind of further those skills, and as part of that I'll be doing this series where I'll be taking a song or a tune and showing you the process step by step for how to take any melody and adapt it for an arrangement on the banjo. And for these videos I'm going to be using some of the tunes and songs that are inside of the vault. The first one we're going to start with today is Pretty Polly. So I'm going to show you kind of from scratch how I would build a clawhammer style arrangement for the song Pretty Polly. Learning how to do this sort of thing will really open up all sorts of doors for you musically, and that's why it's one of the primary goals of the Breakthrough Banjo course. Also, for those of you who have been following parts 1 and 2 of the Playing by Ear articles in the Laws of Banjo series, I thought you'd find this video a nice way of kind of tying together and crystallizing some of the concepts and ideas that are presented there. So back when I was first learning to play the banjo, I always found it strange and a little bit frustrating that whenever new tunes or songs were taught, it was typically showing you how to play it with your fingers, basically showing the movements that were needed to play that piece, whether that was through some kind of written notation or tab, or through just showing you the motions. And that's nice in one sense because it lets you be able to play a new tune or a new song. But on the other hand, that's all it could do. And what I was oftentimes most interested in was kind of understanding how a player who played that particular arrangement came up with it themselves. They obviously weren't learning it from someone else showing them the movements. They'd created it from their own mind, and I really wanted to understand that process. But that's not something that was easy to find. And I knew that the players I'd really admired weren't copying some other person's way of playing something. They were coming up with their own way of doing it. And I kind of wanted to better understand that process. So I was kind of left to figure that out for myself. And I'm not really sure why this is or why this isn't something we see more. Maybe it's because people feel like they're revealing the magician's secrets if they show you how the sausage is made. Or just because it's easier just to teach the movements rather than teach the process for how to build a tune. But for whatever reason, it's not something that's done very often, nor is teaching the ability to play by ear, despite the fact that it's so important to reach kind of the higher intermediate and advanced levels of musicianship. So like I said, in this video I'll be showing you how to build an arrangement for the song Pretty Polly. And I've chosen Pretty Polly for a few reasons. Number one, it's an awesome song. It's a real banjo player's banjo song. And it can sound really great without having to be very technically complex or sophisticated. And there are a few songs like that in the banjo repertoire that I think are great for people to learn early on. It's also in the G modal tuning, which is G on the 5th string, and then D, G, C, D. So that's known as G modal, which gives it kind of that eerie quality that the banjo is so good at conveying. And it produces this kind of G chord that's neither major or minor and gives kind of an ambiguous sound that's part of that haunting quality. It's also a fairly simple song melodically, which is nice to as one to start with. And in general, that's kind of true of songs where there are words. that those are better for a few reasons for starting. If you're just starting this process of learning how to play by ear, it helps to have a melody with words, not only because that helps you to remember it, but also because those tend to be more simple melodically than something that's an instrumental only, because with a song you're kind of limited by the constraints of how fast the human voice can sing. And I recently played Pretty Polly as one of the Song of the Week installments, and my version there actually didn't include any drop thumbing, so I thought that would be another good reason to show it here early on. All right, so let's begin this process. So the first step here, what we're going to do is just find the melody notes for Pretty Polly on the banjo. And essentially what we're doing when we doing that is we're taking an imagined note in our mind and trying to match it to a note on the banjo. Now, when we do that, we want to make sure that the version that we're hearing is in the key that we want. So in this case, we're in a G modal tuning, so we want our version of Pretty Polly to be in the key of G. And there are a couple of ways that you can do that to check and see, to make sure that the one you're hearing in your head is in the right key. So one thing you can do is just strum against the strings and kind of give what the background sound of that key and that tuning is. Polly, you can kind of hear where you're supposed to start. Another thing you can do is that the melody, the first note in the melody is oftentimes going to be the same as the key it's in. So in this case, a G, and our third open string is a G. So Polly, Polly, Pretty Polly. So now we know we've got the right key. If we were to be in the wrong key, for example, say we were in A, which would be Polly, Pretty Polly, come go along with me, we'd be searching for the notes on the wrong spot in our banjo, and we don't want that. So that's why making sure you're hearing it in the right key is the place to start. So now Pretty Polly is kind of has three distinct little phrases that repeat. So the first of those phrases goes like this. Polly, Pretty Polly, come go along with me. So now what we're going to do is find those notes that I just sang on the banjo. And I already gave you one hint, which is the first note is that open G string. And if you want to pause the video now and see if you can find those notes, go ahead and do that, and then unpause and I'll show you where they are. Okay, so let's now play those notes in that first phrase on the banjo. Again, we're not doing anything but playing the melody notes. So, Polly, Pretty Polly, come go along with me. The only notes here are the open third and fourth string, as well as the fourth string at the third fret and the third string at the third fret. So now let's give that melody the clawhammer treatment. And here we're just going to do something simple. If we have the space to put in a ditty strum after a melody note, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just follow the melody note with our thumb on the fifth string. So like this. So pretty straightforward. Now let's move on to the second phrase. Polly, Pretty Polly, come go along with me. So here we basically have the same melodic contour as that first phrase. It's just been raised a little bit in pitch. And I'll give you another clue that first note in the second phrase is a D. And you can play that either on the open first string, Polly, or the second string at the second fret, since that's also a D. And I would recommend go ahead and playing that note on the second string at the second fret for reasons that'll become clear in a minute. So if you want to pause it and find it before I tell you where those notes are, go ahead and do that. All right, so here are the melody notes for our second part. So, Polly, Pretty Polly, come go along with me. And now now let's clawhammerify that phrase, doing the same thing we did before, adding a ditty strum after a melody note where there's space, otherwise just following it with the thumb on the 5th string. Alright, so now let's find the 3rd and final phrase on the banjo. First, the melody for that part goes like this. Before we get married, some pleasures to see. So I'll give you another clue. The first note is again that D note, which we can get at the 2nd string at the 2nd fret. If you want to pause the video and then come back and I'll show you where those notes are. Okay, let's follow the same procedure we did before to clawhammerify it, and it will go something like this. And I should add here that whether or not you follow all of those notes, all of those melody notes with a thumb on the 5th string is kind of up to you. Whether or not you want your arrangement to have that staccato feel throughout or to have some pauses where it breathes a little bit, that's kind of a personal decision. So feel free to experiment with that on this particular version we're creating. So let's play through this first arrangement we've created from start to finish. Alright, so now we have a nice sounding initial clawhammer version of the song Pretty Polly. Now let's see what we can do with a few embellishments to see if we can add a little bit of interest to our arrangement. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hammer on to those melody notes that we have at the 3rd fret on the 3rd and 4th string. So that'll sound like this. And so basically what we're doing there, if you recall that anytime we're playing a note with our fretting finger, either as a hammer-on or a pull-off, we're almost always playing those notes on the offbeat. And essentially what that does is takes a melody note and shifts it to an offbeat, or it syncopates it. So this is a way of adding some rhythmic interest to this song by syncopating the melody. So now let's do something similar with our second part by either hammering on or pulling off to our melody notes wherever we can. So that'll sound like this. So if you recall, I encouraged you to play this D not at the open 1st string, but at the 2nd string, 2nd fret. And that's so that we could do this pull off. If we wanted to get that same sound and play the open D string instead, so instead of pulling off from the 2nd string, play it from the 1st string, we would have to drop thumb into that that open 2nd string like this. So you have two ways of getting the same sound, but this fretted way allows you to get that same sound with a pull-off instead of a drop thumb. And neither of those things are necessarily better. It's just a matter of what approach you want to take and where you kind of are in your technical progress. So if you haven't quite gotten drop thumb down, but you can pull off, then there's an option for playing the exact same thing. And now let's do the same thing with our 3rd phrase. Now let's put those 3 together and see what that sounds like. Pretty good, right? So now, just by adding some hammer-ons and pull-offs with that fairly simple melodic structure, we've created something really interesting that's not too challenging from a technical standpoint, but sounds like there's a lot going on and sounds really cool. Now I'm going to take that last version kind of as the base and just show you what my final arrangement that I played in the Song of the Week sounded like. So essentially what I've done is taking that last arrangement that we built and just adding in some delayed pull-offs in certain spots, as well as a Gaelic style lick that sounded like this, which you should be familiar with, and got to that final version. And instead of tabbing that one out, I would encourage you, if you want to get one that sounds similar, to just experiment a little bit with playing that. Again, all you have are these 3 spots where you're fretting, and see if you can get something that sounds similar. It would be actually kind of tricky to tab that out exactly how it was supposed to sound, and it would look more confusing, I think, on paper than it would just messing around with it and hearing it for yourself. And after all, the goal here is for you to start to be able to hear how these things sound and sort of match what you're doing with your hands to a sound that you want to have in your mind. Okay, so hopefully you found that deconstruction and reconstruction of the song Pretty Polly helpful, and hopefully a good way to reinforce some of the concepts we reviewed in the playing by ear modules. And like I said, this is going to be the first of several videos where I'll be doing this sort of thing and taking the songs and tunes that are in the vault to do so. So I will see you in the next installment.